Reforger 1984. Reforger stands for Return to Forces Germany. And it was an annual war games held over in Germany by NATO forces. And it was, if you've watched my video on Team Spirit in Korea, it's very similar to that, in that you have your forces that are stationed in country, in this case Germany, and then you have elements coming from overseas to either act as the aggressors or to reinforce the forces that are currently in country. So yeah, I was actually stationed with Echo Company, 7th Engineers with the 5th Infantry Division, which was in Fort Polk, Louisiana. And it was the late summer of 1984 that we got word that we were going to go to Germany. And we were real excited because, you know, I had done my tour in Korea, and it was an exciting tour. There was always something going on. And, you know, the camp was so small that you were always off the camp doing things. And at Fort Polk, Fort Polk is so big. You could just, we never left it. We would do all our field training there. We would go out for, you know, a couple of weeks at a time and in the field, but it was all on Fort Polk. There was a lake on Fort Polk called Engineer Lake. That's where we did all our bridging operations. It was very rare for us to leave the Fort Polk. And so when we got word that we were, going to leave Fort Polk and go to Germany, we were all excited. And of course, you know, there were a lot of guys that did their previous tour in Germany, and you know, they were excited about going back. And of course, their stories about Germany just made, you know, us wanting to go there even more exciting. And so we started preparing, and we started. The biggest thing was driving lessons. We had to pass a driving course to travel, to be able to drive on the German roads. And you know, this is back during the Cold War too, so the Berlin Wall was still up. We took courses on espionage, dealing with Russian spies spying on us and what we were doing. So it was pretty interesting rolling up to that. And then we were actually going to be picking our equipment up when we arrived in Germany, but a lot of the armored elements of the 5th Infantry Division were taking theirs. So they actually sent them over, and they were supposed to arrive in Belgium. So and they sent about 800 vehicles over. And it was early September. We went from Fort Polk up to Leesville, up to Barksdale Air Force Base up in Shreveport, and boarded planes and flew from there into Frankfurt. And then from Frankfurt, we boarded buses and went about 100 miles to near the French border to a place called Permezens, and that's where we were going to pick up all of our bridge equipment. And so we stayed there for a couple of weeks, getting all our bridge equipment ready. It was all in long-term storage, so we had to put the batteries in them, top them off with all their fluids, get them started, make sure we had our equipment on them, and then we, once we got all those vehicles out of long-term storage, then we headed on down to Stuttgart. And just like in Team Spirit, we were in Korea, we were the Blue Forces, we were going to be the blue forces here in Germany. We were going up against the orange forces. So we went down to Stuttgart, and it wasn't too bad getting down there because we pretty much took the Autobahn, and so we got down there pretty quickly. And then once we got down in the operating area, that's where things kind of bogged down. Uh, it was the wettest winter in decades in Germany, and so you can imagine all this heavy equipment, tanks, armored vehicles. It was things were getting chopped up. The fields were getting chopped up. The roads were getting chopped up, and over in Europe, the roads are very narrow, and we were having a tough time. We have a I'll put a picture in. This isn't a picture of Germany. This would be a picture of a bridge truck from Korea, but it was the exact same truck, the exact same bridge bay that we used in Germany. I'll put a picture in right now so you can see the size of it. So we were trying to navigate through these small German towns, and we tried to go around them if we could. But so it was basically a game of uh, drive up to a town, have the Jeep go forward to see if we can get through it the best way, or go if we had to go around it, go around it, and then the Jeep come back, and then us starting to filter through it, the town. So it was a lot of stop and go, a lot of stop and go, and of course, we had vehicles breaking down, and it was we had people all over the place, and then we started getting kind of disconnected from each other, and so it was very interesting. But for being a junior enlisted, just following our leader, it was really fun and relaxing. And a lot of times when we would stop and wait for the Jeep to go scout and then come back, we would be next to a little house, or a little they called it a guest house, a little bar tavern. And so we would just kind of get out of the truck and go in and talk, and sometimes even have time to grab something to eat, and before the Jeep came back, because we always knew it would be an hour or so before they scouted everything out and came back. And yeah, so we were just kind of living off the land, living off sea rations, and so it was very interesting. And finally, we came to a camping area near the Danube River, where we were going to do some bridging, and that's where we kind of camped out for a while. And I'll put some pictures of us. We came into this little town, and we went into this field in the back of the town, and and you could tell by the way we're dressed. It's cold. It's damp. What I put my long johns on and my uniform and my rain gear on. I think when we first left Parmesan's, and I don't think I took it off until we turned our stuff back in 2 months later. But I'll throw those pictures right now of us camped out in this field. And we stayed there for a while, waiting for our turn. The war games had kicked off on the 17th of September. Orange forces, they had tried to bridge the Danube River, but it was so wet and the river was flowing so fast they couldn't. It was too dangerous, so they didn't do it. And so we were just waiting at this village, and we were standing guard duty like you would do if you were held up anywhere in the army, in the field. And we would just take, it was rotating bases. We'd go up into the town, and sit there in the town watching the roads coming in and coming out, and radio whatever we saw back to the command tent. And it was just kind of odd, though. I just remember sitting there in the doorway of some business, trying to stay out of the wind and rain, and with my M16 pointed down the road, and here's the Germans are just walking up and down the sidewalk, doing their daily business, and me laying there with an M16 on the sidewalk. Uh, but yeah, that was what it was all about, though. And they were used to it because it was an annual event. So on the 24th, the Blue Forces, we started our counterattack, and we were called up to bridge the Danube. But we never did put a full closure bridge in because it was still, the river was still pretty fast moving from all the rain. So we did some rafting operations, and I'll put some pictures in right now, and they're kind of dark because it was very overcasty. And so it was so these pictures are kind of dark of us putting a raft in, and actually you'll see these as we were putting the raft in. We came under attack by Orange forces, and you'll see these Cobra helicopters coming down in the pictures, and they actually, as they came, made a pass on our raft. The war game judges came up to us and said, "Hey, they just blew up 2 of your raft bays, so you need to change them out." So we had to, take 2 bays out and then replace them with new bays. So I'll put those pictures in of us right now rafting the Danube, and those helicopters coming in. And then by the 26th, the 5th Infantry Division was on the counterattack, and they were kind of leading the charge after we had got them across the Danube. And uh, once they got to a certain predetermined point on their counterattack, the war games were called, and everything kind of wound down. And that's when we headed back up to Permerjean and turned in our equipment. And that was time consuming too, because now we had to put them back in long-term storage. So everything had to get power washed, cleaned, no mud on anything. The fluids all had to be drained out of the vehicles, batteries pulled out. So that was the process, getting everything back into storage. And then from there we went about 20 miles out of Stuttgart into a holding area until we were able to. They were able to schedule us to fly, fly back to Fort Polk, and this holding area was just a big, huge tent city in a big, huge field, and it was so damp and so rainy. It was all muddy, and so they had brought all these wooden pallets in to make sidewalks so you could go from the tent to the chow hall to the showers, and it was that was the first time I remember getting a good shower too. They had a big big huge tent with showers in them, and we stayed in a big huge tent. I mean, this the biggest tent I've ever stayed in on cots, and then the showers and chow hall were this big huge, the biggest army tents I'd ever seen. And yeah, there wasn't much to do there, and unfortunately there was a suicide there. We were laying in just lounging around on our cots one afternoon, and they had outside of every tent there was probably a row of 20 25 porta potties, and we're sitting there and we heard a gunshot, and so we rushed out of the tent to see what was going on, and some guy from the tent next to us, a totally different company, had went in there and shot himself, and he was dead, and they suspected that when he was out at the range, because we did live fire when we were there too at the range, he must have pocketed a couple of M16 rounds, and then used that opportunity to kill himself. So that was a sad moment there. But they tried to keep us busy. There was always sightseeing tours going on, and I remember taking a tour to the Rhine River, and then just going into the neighboring towns. They would bus you in, and I'll put a picture in right now of me and a couple of my platoon mates in on one of these tours. Yeah, so it was finally, we got our turn to rotate out of the tent city, and went back up to Frankfurt, and boarded the boarded the plane back to Barksdale, and then back to Fort Polk, and we got back in probably the mid October. So it was a great distraction from Fort Polk, and it definitely broke up the mundane routine there of just doing everything on Fort Polk. So yeah, and it was also just a great cap to, because soon after, in July of '85, I got out of the Army. So it was kind of nice to have done both big, huge war games uh, in the military at that time, Team Spirit in Korea, and then the following year do Reforger in Germany. So that was pretty unique, and I was really glad I was able to get both of those in during my tour. So I hope you like that that little war story, and I actually detailed that story. It's Fort Polk's a whole chapter in my memoirs around the world, and I do a chapter on each one of my assignments: 3 years in the Army and 22 years in the Coast Guard. And you can get it through my website, www.edsemler.com, which will link you to Amazon, where you can get it as a paperback or an ebook. And uh, yeah, great time at Reforger, Certain Fury, 1984.